The first laugh came from the bench. It wasn't a polite laugh, either. It was the kind that made people in the gallery glance at each other. The kind that told everyone exactly where the power sat, in Briar Falls County Courthouse, Briarstone. 16-year-old Claire Bennett stood at the defense table in a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit. The sleeves swallowed her hands. Her wrists were thin from weeks in detention. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, like she was trying to hold herself together with the rubber band. Behind her, her court-appointed attorney looked exhausted, like he'd already lost. Across the aisle, the prosecutor, clean suit, confident smile, stacked folders like trophies. And up on the bench, Judge Raymond Hale leaned forward, eyes sharp, mouth curled, and spoke like he was delivering a lesson. "Ms. Bennett," he said, slow and heavy, "this court has heard enough fantasies about metadata and server logs. You're a teenager. You're not an expert. You're not a detective. And you are certainly not going to lecture this court on evidence." The courtroom was quiet, but it wasn't respectful quiet. It was curious quiet. Claire swallowed once, then lifted her chin. "I'm not here to lecture," she said. "I'm here to correct the record." Judge Hale's eyebrow lifted like he'd just been entertained. "And how do you plan to do that?" he asked. "With another story?" Claire slid a small, clear evidence bag onto the table. Inside was a single item, labeled in black ink. Exhibit D, Email Archive, USB. Sealed. The bailiff took one step forward, suspicious. The prosecutor's smile thinned. Judge Hale glanced down like he already knew the ending. Claire spoke again, steady. "That USB contains the original email archive the state claims came from my laptop," she said. "But the archive doesn't match the seizure report. The timestamps don't match the server. And the chain of custody doesn't match the clerk's intake log." The prosecutor let out a short, mocking breath. "Objection," he said. "Your Honor, she's arguing. She's not qualified to interpret." Judge Hale cut him off with a raised hand, still looking at Claire like she was a kid arguing about curfew. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "you've already been convicted. Today is sentencing, not show and tell." Claire didn't move. "Then why is the state still leaning on a confession email as the reason to bury me alive?" she asked. That's when the room shifted, because the prosecutor's eyes flicked fast toward the clerk's desk, and the clerk's fingers stopped typing. One detail didn't fit, and Claire knew it. But then, Judge Hale leaned back and nodded at the bailiff. "Take that," he said, dismissive, "and return it to counsel. Ms. Bennett, sit down." Claire didn't sit. She turned slightly, just enough to face the gallery without turning her back on the bench. "My name is Claire Bennett," she said, voice carrying, "and I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking for 5 minutes of verification." The prosecutor stepped forward, irritation rising. "Your Honor, this is emotional theater," he said. "She's manipulating the room." Claire's attorney finally cleared his throat. "Judge," he said carefully, "allocution allows her to speak." Judge Hale's mouth tightened. "All right," he said. "Speak. Then I sentence." Claire's hands trembled once, but only once. "My case is built on one thing," she said. "An email archive that supposedly proves I planned what happened. The state says I used my school laptop to send messages about the money transfers, the access badge, the cover story. They say the archive proves intent." She paused and glanced at the prosecutor's folders. "But an email archive has fingerprints," she continued. "Headers, message ID patterns, time zone offsets, server hops. It's not just words on a screen." The prosecutor scoffed again. Claire kept going. "The state's confession email was entered as Exhibit B," she said. "Time-stamped 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. They say it came from my account. But the server log they disclosed shows my account logged out at 10:19 p.m. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. The prosecutor snapped. "Objection. Misstating evidence." Claire looked straight at Judge Hale. "It's in the discovery packet," she said. "Page 214. Email relay log. I memorized it." Judge Hale's eyes narrowed. "You memorized it?" he repeated, like he didn't believe teenagers could memorize anything but song lyrics. Claire nodded. Because I've been awake in a cell every night replaying every second of how my life got stolen, she said. And because someone in this courtroom counted on me being too young to understand the difference between received time and sent time. The prosecutor's jaw tightened. Judge Hale tapped his pen once. That's a serious accusation, he said. It's a serious sentence, Claire answered. The courtroom held its breath. And somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "She's not wrong." That's when everything changed. But then, Judge Hale's voice cooled. "I will not allow this court to become a circus," he said. "Ms. Bennett, you were convicted by a jury." Claire nodded again, like she'd expected that. "Yes," she said. "A jury that never saw the full archive. They saw screenshots." The prosecutor stepped forward fast. "Your Honor, we provided everything required," he said. "She's trying to relitigate guilt." Claire turned to him. "Then put the archive on the record," she said. "Not screenshots. The actual archive. And let an independent expert verify the headers." The prosecutor laughed. Short, sharp. "Independent expert," he said. "She's been watching crime shows." Claire didn't flinch. "I don't watch crime shows," she said. "I watched my brother beg for someone to listen." The words landed heavy. Judge Hale's eyes flickered just once. Claire's throat tightened, but she forced the next sentence out. "My brother Ethan wasn't much older than me when he got blamed for something he didn't do," she said. "He took a plea because he was scared. He died in prison before anyone checked the evidence." Her voice shook, but her gaze stayed locked. "I promised him," she said. "I promised I would never let paperwork bury the truth again." The prosecutor tried to jump in, but Claire lifted a hand, small but commanding. "And I didn't come here empty," she said. "I came here prepared." One detail didn't fit, and now everyone could feel it. But then, Judge Hale signaled the bailiff. "Approach," he said. "Counsel only." Claire's attorney and the prosecutor moved to the bench. Claire stayed where she was. She watched their mouths move in whispers that didn't reach the microphones. The bailiff's posture stiffened, like the air was suddenly dangerous. The clerk avoided looking at anyone. Judge Hale listened, nodded once, and then leaned closer to the prosecutor. His voice was low, but Claire caught enough. "We are not reopening." The prosecutor nodded, confident again. Judge Hale sat back and faced the room. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "you are trying to introduce evidence after conviction. The proper channel is appeal, not a speech." Claire took a breath. "Then grant a continuance," she said. "Order a verification hearing. 5 minutes with a neutral analyst." Judge Hale's lips pressed together. "Denied." The word hit like a door slamming. Claire's attorney looked down. The prosecutor looked satisfied. And Judge Hale looked ready to end it. The clerk's voice rose, official. "All rise." The clerk began. "Wait," Claire said. The clerk froze. Judge Hale's eyes sharpened. "Ms. Bennett," he warned. Claire's hand went to her pocket. Not fast. Not sneaky. Just deliberate. The bailiff stepped forward, palm out. Claire didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a cheap, cracked phone with a clear jail sticker on the back. Gasps fluttered through the gallery. Phones weren't supposed to be out in court. Claire raised it slightly. "I have one call," she said. Judge Hale's face hardened. "You will put that down," he said. Claire looked up at him. "I'm calling your dad," she said. The courtroom didn't just murmur. It erupted. The prosecutor snapped. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." The bailiff moved faster now. Judge Hale's voice thundered. "Bailiff, confiscate that phone now." Claire lifted it higher and spoke into it like she was already connected. "Attorney General Marshall," she said clearly. "This is Claire Bennett calling from Briar Falls County Courthouse in Briarstone. Your son just sentenced me to life based on evidence I can prove is forged." The entire room stopped breathing. The bailiff froze mid-step. The prosecutor's face drained of color. Judge Hale went still, like a man who suddenly realized the floor wasn't solid. One detail didn't fit, and it was the judge's reaction. But then, Judge Hale stood. "Turn that off," he ordered, but his voice had changed. It wasn't booming anymore. It was tight. "Now." Claire kept the phone to her ear. A voice crackled faintly through the speaker. Deep, controlled, older. "This is Attorney General Marshall," the voice said. "Who is this?" Claire's eyes stayed on Judge Hale. "My name is Claire Bennett," she said. "I'm 16, and I have an email archive on a sealed USB that doesn't match the court's chain of custody logs." Judge Hale's hands clenched on the bench rail. The prosecutor stammered, "Your Honor." Judge Hale cut him off, but not like before. "Everyone sit," he snapped. The gallery sat like they were tied down. The Attorney General's voice came again, quieter, sharper. "Raymond," he said, and there was something personal in that one word. "Step away from a microphone." Judge Hale's face tightened. Claire's heart pounded so hard she thought the whole room could hear it. "I'm not asking you to fix it because he's your son," Claire said into the phone. "I'm asking you to stop what happens when a courtroom becomes a machine." Silence. Then the Attorney General spoke, measured. "Do you have counsel?" he asked. "Yes," Claire said, "but the judge refuses verification." "And the evidence item?" he asked. "Email archive," Claire said. "Sealed USB. Labeled Exhibit D." "Chain of custody," the voice pressed. "Doesn't match," Claire said. "Intake log discrepancy. And server log mismatch." A beat. Then calm as steel. "Do not hang up." Judge Hale's eyes flicked to the bailiff like he wanted control back, but control was already bleeding out of the room. The Attorney General's voice turned colder. "Raymond," he said again, "you will pause this proceeding. You will place the exhibit into secure custody, and you will allow a neutral verification." Immediately, Judge Hale swallowed. "Dad," he started but stopped himself. The prosecutor looked like he wanted to vanish, and Claire felt the first breath of something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope. Proof. That's when everything changed. But then, Judge Hale snapped, trying to recover. "This is improper influence," he said to the room, louder now. "This court." The Attorney General's voice cut through the phone speaker firm. "This is not influence," he said. "This is oversight. And if there's even a hint of evidence tampering involving a public court record, I will refer it for federal review." The words "federal review" landed like a gavel. Judge Hale's nostrils flared. The clerk stared at the desk like it might explode. Claire's attorney finally found his voice. "Your Honor," he said quickly, "we move to reopen for evidentiary verification, limited to Exhibit B and the email archive authenticity, with a neutral expert." The prosecutor's mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then he tried. "Objection," he managed. This is coercion." Judge Hale's eyes darted. Bench, gallery, phone, clerk, prosecutor. For the first time, he looked unsure. He stared at Claire like she wasn't a kid anymore, like she was a problem he couldn't dismiss. Finally, he sat down slowly. "Proceedings are paused," he said, voice strained. A ripple moved through the gallery, like the entire courthouse had exhaled at once. Judge Hale turned to the bailiff. "Secure the exhibit," he said, "in the evidence locker. Seal intact. Document everything." The bailiff nodded, suddenly very careful. Judge Hale looked at the clerk. "Log the time," he ordered. "Now." The clerk's fingers shook as she typed. Claire watched it all like she was watching a safe crack open. One detail didn't fit, and now it was being written down. But then, in a small conference room just off the courtroom, still inside Briar Falls County Courthouse, the verification hearing began within the hour. Judge Hale tried to act normal again, but it didn't work. His pride had cracks now. The prosecutor sat rigid, eyes locked on the USB like it was a ticking device. Claire sat beside her attorney, hands folded, not smiling, because she knew the system could still crush her if she blinked. Judge Hale cleared his throat. "This will be limited," he said. "We are verifying authenticity. Nothing more." A woman in a gray suit stepped forward with a hard case and calm eyes. Clara Grant, independent forensic analyst. She placed her credentials on the table. "Certified digital forensic examiner," she said. "Court qualified. Retained privately." The prosecutor jumped. "By who?" he demanded. Clara's eyes didn't move. By a legal aid foundation, she said, not by the defendant. Claire's ally, Nora Blake, stood near the back, hands clasped, face determined. She'd been the one calling every number she could find, filing requests, begging for help. Clara opened the sealed bag in view of everyone. She didn't touch the USB with bare hands. She used gloves, photographed the seal, documented the label, and read the serial number out loud. Seal intact, she said. Label reads Exhibit D. Serial matches evidence tag. Judge Hale nodded stiffly. Clara plugged the USB into a forensic write blocker and began to extract the archive. Her laptop screen showed a line of technical text. The prosecutor leaned in. Clara spoke like she was narrating for the record. Hashing the archive now, she said. Generating SHA 256 checksum. Numbers appeared. She wrote them down. Checksum recorded, she said. This is the archive as provided. Judge Hale tried to sound detached. And what can that tell us? He asked. Clara looked up. It tells us whether this archive matches what the state claims it is, she said. She clicked. A list of emails appeared. Clara opened the confession email the prosecution had leaned on. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Here are the headers, she said. Message ID. Received lines. Relay path. She pointed to a timestamp. This email claims it was sent at 11:42 p.m. local time, she said. The prosecutor nodded like he'd won already. Clara continued. But the received headers show it passed through an internal relay at 12:57 a.m., she said, in a different time zone offset. Judge Hale frowned. Clara didn't stop. And this relay, she said, is not a public provider. It's a private corporate mail gateway. The prosecutor snapped. So what? Clara clicked again. The mail gateway name resolves to Stanton Systems, she said. Victor Stanton's company. The room went silent in a new way. Not curious. Dangerous. One detail didn't fit, and now it had a name. But then, the prosecutor leaned forward, voice sharp. That's speculation, he said. You can't prove. Clara held up a hand without looking at him. I'm not finished, she said. She typed. A log file popped up. Within the archive, she said, there's an import log. It shows when these emails were added to the archive container. She highlighted a line. Import completed, she read. On a Thursday at 3:16 p.m. Claire's attorney blinked. The laptop was seized Tuesday night, he said quickly. Clara nodded. Correct, she said. Yet the archive indicates it was compiled 2 days later. Judge Hale's eyes moved to the prosecutor. The prosecutor's lips parted, but no words came. Clara clicked again. Also, she said, the message ID pattern doesn't match the sender's account history. It's inconsistent with the provider. It matches Stanton Systems' internal generator. She let that hang. Judge Hale's voice came out quieter now. Are you saying the email was created elsewhere? He asked. Clara looked him dead in the eye. I'm saying the email was injected into the archive after the seizure, she said, which indicates tampering. The word hit like a siren. Tampering. Evidence. Court. Judge Hale's face turned tight, almost pale. The prosecutor stood abruptly. Objection, he barked. This is beyond the scope. Judge Hale raised a hand, but it wasn't dismissive anymore. It was shaky. Sit down, he said. The prosecutor sat. Claire's hands tightened under the table. She didn't breathe until Clara spoke again. And there's more, Clara said. That's when everything changed. But then, Clara pulled up a sign and log. This archive contains a linked authentication record, she said. It shows the account access used to retrieve messages. She highlighted an IP address. This access came from an IP assigned to Stanton Systems' downtown office, she said. Not from the detention center. Not from the Bennett household. Not from any school network. Judge Hale looked like he'd been slapped with math. Claire's attorney whispered, Oh my God. Nora's eyes welled. The prosecutor's voice went thin. We don't know who was at that computer, he said quickly. It could have been her, she could have. Clara didn't even blink. There's also a badge swipe record in the discovery, she said. for the building where the corporate gateway sits. She slid a printed page across the table. It shows one badge used at 3:12 p.m. Thursday, she said, for minutes before the archive import completed. Judge Hale looked down. The name on the badge record wasn't Claire. It wasn't Nora. It wasn't Clara. It was a courthouse employee. Liam Mercer, court IT specialist. Claire's stomach dropped. Judge Hale's eyes snapped up. "Mr. Mercer?" he said sharply. The clerk's voice trembled. "Your Honor, he's not here." Judge Hale's jaw clenched, and Claire realized something terrifying. This wasn't just Victor Stanton. This wasn't just the prosecutor. This had reached into the courthouse itself. One detail didn't fit, because the system had fingerprints too. But then, Judge Hale tried to keep his voice steady. "Counsel," he said, "this court will require an explanation." The prosecutor stood again, sweating now. "Your Honor," he said, "I was not aware of any involvement by court staff." Judge Hale's eyes narrowed. "Were you aware of Victor Stanton's email gateway being the relay?" he demanded. The prosecutor hesitated. That hesitation was the loudest sound Claire had heard all day. Before he could answer, the door opened. A uniformed deputy stepped in, carrying a sealed envelope. He approached the clerk, who looked like she might faint, and handed it over. The clerk read the front, eyes widening. "Your Honor," she said, voice shaking, "this is an affidavit." Judge Hale took it. He read silently for a long moment. Then he looked up. His face had changed. "This affidavit," he said, "is from Liam Mercer." The prosecutor's mouth fell open. Judge Hale's voice turned rigid, official. "He states," Judge Hale read, "that he was pressured by Victor Stanton's legal team to correct the archive contents. He states he was told the court would appreciate his cooperation. He states he was promised job security and debt relief." Claire felt her vision blur. This was it. This was the whistleblower. Not a dramatic confession. A signed affidavit. A record. Real. Judge Hale continued, each line hitting harder. He states he was instructed to deliver the modified archive to the prosecutor's office through the evidence intake window after hours. Judge Hale read, he states the original archive remains in a sealed backup file on the courthouse server. The prosecutor shot up. This is insane," he shouted. Judge Hale slammed his hand down. "Enough," he barked. The room flinched, and Claire sat frozen, realizing she was watching the machine break apart in real time. What they found next shocked everyone. But then, Judge Hale's voice lowered again, careful now. "Ms. Grant," he said to Clara, "can you verify this claim? The backup file." Clara nodded once. "If I'm given access," she said. Judge Hale looked at the clerk. "Get courthouse IT access," he ordered. The clerk stared, terrified. "Your Honor." "Now," he said. Minutes later, they were in the records room, still inside the courthouse, standing in front of a terminal that smelled like dust and old coffee. Clara worked calmly, documenting every step. She opened a directory labeled with a case number. She found a backup file, Bennett_archive_zip. She clicked Properties. Created, Tuesday, 9:58 p.m. Modified, Tuesday, 9:58 p.m. Clara looked up. "That's consistent with seizure night," she said. She hashed it. She compared it to the USB copy. They did not match. Clara turned to Judge Hale. "The backup file is the original," she said. "The USB copy is altered." Judge Hale's face looked hollow for a second. Then he straightened like he was holding himself upright by force. He turned back toward the prosecutor. "You presented altered evidence to a jury," he said. The prosecutor stammered. I didn't." Judge Hale didn't let him finish. "You will not speak," he said. "Not until you have counsel." The prosecutor's face collapsed. Judge Hale turned to Claire's attorney. "File your motion," he said. "Immediately." Claire's attorney nodded fast, like he was waking up. Judge Hale's eyes moved to Claire, and for the first time, his voice didn't sound like a man talking down to a child. It sounded like a man realizing he'd been used. "Ms. Bennett," he said quietly. The sentences stayed. Claire's breath caught. The conviction, her attorney asked. Judge Hale swallowed. This court will vacate the verdict pending further proceedings, he said, and I am referring this matter for investigation. He paused, then added, like it physically hurt to say it, and I am recusing myself. The judge who had laughed at her was stepping away, in the same courthouse, in front of everyone. That's when everything changed. But then, the backlash didn't wait for the ink to dry. Outside the courthouse doors, reporters gathered like sharks, shouting questions. Claire, did you really call the Attorney General? Judge Hale, are you resigning? Victor Stanton, did you tamper with evidence? Claire was rushed down a hallway, still inside the building, escorted by deputies who suddenly treated her like she mattered. Nora caught up beside her, eyes wet. You did it, Nora whispered. Claire didn't answer, because doing it meant surviving what came next. And what came next was ugly. Victor Stanton's lawyers moved fast. They filed motions. They sent letters. They demanded suppression. They claimed Liam Mercer was unstable, that Clara Grant was biased, that Claire had staged the call. They even tried to make Claire the villain again, a teenage girl interfering with court proceedings, a dangerous manipulator. And for a moment, it almost worked, because the system doesn't like being embarrassed, especially by someone it underestimated. One detail didn't fit, and the system wanted to erase it. But then, in the weeks that followed, federal investigators arrived quietly. No dramatic raid, just calm, steady pressure. They subpoenaed logs. They collected access records. They pulled badge swipes. They traced payments. And they found what Victor Stanton had been hiding behind all that confidence. A pattern. It wasn't just Claire. It was other cases, other defendants, other confession emails, other digital records that looked clean on the surface, but didn't match the raw logs underneath. Victor Stanton wasn't just protecting himself. He was protecting a whole network of deals that depended on silencing people. Stanton Systems had contracts tied to public funds, and someone had been laundering accountability through court outcomes, not with violence, with paperwork, with manipulated records, with people who couldn't afford experts. Claire sat in a courthouse waiting room one afternoon, still in Briar Falls County Courthouse, watching Nora read updates from Clara, and Claire realized the truth that made her stomach twist. If she hadn't understood metadata, if she hadn't memorized page 214, if she hadn't made that call, she would already be disappearing into a prison system built to forget her. What they found next shocked everyone. But then, the Attorney General, Diane Marshall, never came in like a hero. She came in like a professional. She requested a conflict review. She required documentation. She demanded a clean chain of custody policy for any digital exhibits in that courthouse moving forward. And she met Claire once, privately, in a small courthouse office. No cameras, no speeches, just two people and a stack of papers. Diane Marshall looked at Claire for a long moment and said quietly, "You didn't call me for a favor." Claire's throat tightened. "No," she said. "I called you because your son wouldn't listen." Diane didn't flinch. "I raised him to respect the record," she said. "And if he failed today, he will answer for it." Claire's voice came out small. "He laughed at me." Diane's eyes held steady. "Then let the record teach him," she said. And Claire understood something then that she'd never understood before. Power doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes power looks like paperwork done right. One detail didn't fit, and Diane Marshall made sure it couldn't be buried again. But then, the hardest part wasn't getting out. It was living after. Even after the conviction was vacated, Claire still had nights where she woke up hearing the judge's laugh in her head. Still had moments where the world felt like a trap disguised as a hallway. Still had fear every time a door clicked shut. Victor Stanton's name stayed in the news for months. Executive under investigation. Evidence tampering allegations. Court IT specialist cooperates. But investigations took time, and public attention moved on fast. Claire could have walked away. She could have tried to be normal. But that promise to Ethan, her brother, didn't let her. So she did the one thing the courthouse never expected. She studied. In a library that smelled like old carpet and fresh determination, Claire earned her GED early. She enrolled in a community program under a new name on paper, Claire B. She took courses in cybersecurity basics, digital evidence handling, and forensic fundamentals. She learned what words meant in real life: chain of custody, authentication, verification, and she learned how to speak the system's language without letting it swallow her. Nora stayed close, working jobs, helping her fill forms, driving her to night classes. Clara checked in, sending reading lists. And slowly, Claire stopped shaking when she saw a courthouse door. That's when everything changed. But then, years passed. Victor Stanton didn't just fall. He took others with him. A courthouse policy review exposed gaps that had been exploited for a long time. A prosecutor's office reshuffled after internal investigations. Leah Mercer testified under oath, and his affidavit became part of a broader record. And Judge Raymond Hale? He didn't get dragged away in handcuffs. Real life didn't do that. Real life did something quieter. He resigned from the bench after the ethics inquiry concluded. His name faded from the courtroom door. His laugh didn't echo there anymore. Claire heard all of it, but she didn't celebrate, because she'd learned something the hard way. Justice isn't fireworks. Justice is the slow, exhausting work of making sure facts can't be edited. And then, one morning, on a cold day in Briar Falls, Briarstone, Claire walked back into the courthouse. Not through the side door. Through the front. She wore a clean suit that actually fit. Her hair was pulled back the same way, but this time it looked like professionalism, not survival. On her badge, printed in clear letters, Claire Bennett, digital forensics consultant. She wasn't there to beg. She was there to testify. A new case. A new defendant. A new set of records that proved guilt. And a new prosecutor who assumed the digital exhibits were untouchable. Claire took the stand, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth. The clerk asked her to state her name for the record. Claire did, and when the prosecutor tried to rush her, tried to talk over her like she was a nuisance, she didn't shrink. She didn't flinch. She looked straight at him and said calmly, "I'm going to need you to slow down, because the metadata won't." The courtroom went still. The judge, different now, older, careful, leaned forward. "Miss Bennett," the judge said respectfully, "what did you find?" Claire took a breath, glanced at the exhibit list, and spoke with the steady weight of someone who had earned every word. "I found a mismatch," she said, "a record that doesn't fit, and an edit that left fingerprints." She paused, letting the room catch up, and this time, she added, "We're not using screenshots." She turned slightly toward the gallery, where a teenage girl sat beside a public defender, eyes wide, terrified in the same way Claire once was. Claire met her eyes for a second and gave her the smallest nod. Then Claire looked back at the bench. "Your Honor," she said, "I move we put the original email archive into evidence and verify chain of custody on the record." The judge nodded. "Granted," the judge said, and somewhere deep inside Claire, the humiliation moment finally flipped, because years ago, in this same courthouse, a judge had laughed at a teenage girl and told her nobody important was coming for her. Now the room listened when she spoke. Now the record moved when she asked. Now the system had to look at the truth. And if anyone dared to laugh, Claire didn't reach for a phone. She didn't need to. She just smiled, calm and quiet, and thought the one line that brought it full circle. He laughed at her like she was powerless, until she made one call and proved the whole courtroom had been on the wrong side of the record.